We have called together the Sunday Roundtable as we count down to Election Day. Joining us this morning, Democratic political analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican political analyst Rob Gray. Great to have you with us, guys. Just curiosity, you heard the Secretary of State. What worries, and Marianne, let me start with you, what worries you the most, or should we not even be worried here in Massachusetts about what unfolds on Tuesday?
I think the thing people need to think about in Massachusetts is we are not immune to what's going on nationally. There's hacking going on in all kinds of institutions, including here in Massachusetts. That could include the election as well. As good a job as Galvin does, he's not immune either. You know, there are going to be militias that could show up in polling places, including in Massachusetts. The Globe wrote a story about it this week. We can go on and on and on. And I think for that reason alone, you have to be a good voter, a good citizen, a good consumer of information. There will be disinformation online. There will be a lot that goes on. If we can't call this election within 24 hours, it will be bad. So be a smart consumer, be a good citizen, pay attention, don't be intimidated, do your job, save our democracy, save your life.
Rob, that's a good checklist. Might you add something to it?
Well, it is a good checklist. I think Marianne's right in a national sense that there are likely to be hot spots and incidents, unfortunately. But I think here in Massachusetts, we're in good hands. There was a dry run in the primary with mail-in voting and counting. It went mostly okay. They learned something from it. I think election night here is going to be just fine, and we won't see the lines that we have everywhere else. And I think the count will be sound and efficient.
Governor Baker named, switching to another subject, named the first black female to serve as Massachusetts Chief Justice of the Supreme Court this past week, Kimberly Budd. If not for the political environment, however, that we're living in right now, could you envision Baker making the same choice, Rob? Well, I think
Charlie's following in the footsteps of his mentor, Governor Bill Weld, who appointed Margaret Marshall Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the 90s. And, you know, it's another first for a Republican governor, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Marianne, smart political move or smart move or both?
Both. I mean, the fact is Kimberly Budd, period, full stop, is a very impressive, very smart, proven jurist. She deserves this. And the fact that Charlie Baker picked her is inspired too, but she earned it. And so let's appreciate the fact he did it, because we can't take these things for granted or assume people will do them, but she deserved this pick.
Let's talk about COVID now. Massachusetts has been added to the do not travel advisory list in some states. Governor Baker thinks that is a big mistake. And at the heart of the issue is the positive rate here in Massachusetts. The governor believes that everyone who was tested, even those who were tested repeatedly, should be included. Others argue only new people being tested should count. Marianne, let me start with you. Is the governor right? Is the governor wrong? What do you think?
The governor's picking the wrong fight. The fight to pick right now is people not wearing masks, people holding parties, people getting together, parents at hockey rinks. I can go down the list. And as for the data, provide both. I mean, frankly, Massachusetts is not as transparent, I think, as they think they are, or everyone would like them to be. Put it all out there. Put both counts out there. People who had multiple testing, people who had single testing. Put it all out there. But where we can travel and why and when and how we're measured should be measured by the fact that we're not wearing masks. And if we wear a mask, we can do everything.
And Rob, to the travel point, even the governor of New York admitted we're too interconnected. You can't limit travel between New York and Massachusetts. So.
No, there's only so much you can do. People are going to go where they want to go. But on testing, the state is doing the wrong thing, and the media is reporting it the wrong way. When I see 5.4 million people have been tested in Massachusetts reported, I say, who cares who was tested in March, April, May, and June? That makes no difference. We should only care about who was tested in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. And if the state wants to get control of this, they should start to do that.
Switching to youth hockey, it's now being held responsible for creating large COVID clusters. The state shut down rinks for 2 weeks. Was this the right move? Rob, I know this is an issue or a subject close to your heart.
Well, it's saving me some commuting time to hockey rinks. But
at 5 in the morning, right?
Yeah. Listen, I think it's okay to tap the brakes on these things when you identify clusters. It would be the same if it were, you know, restaurants or basketball courts. But I think the main thing is don't pick and choose. I mean, let's be uniform about this and apply uniform standards If it's happening in hockey rinks, great. But I find it hard to believe that, basketball can go on, but hockey can't go on. That seems strange to me.
Marianne?
Well, I mean, look, we've seen in professional sports, virtually every team got infected except the NBA and the WNBA because they were in the bubble and the wubble, right? So I don't see that happening out in the rest of the world where you can what are you going to do? Put the little midget teams in isolation or something? That's not going to happen. But what we can do is have people wear masks, tell parents not to congregate, tell kids not to hang out at the rink all day all together. That was the problem. So again, it goes back to the basics. Wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance. Right. We can do anything.
Right. Just as a point to add to that, Marianne, the NHL ran 2 effective bubbles in Canada and successfully went through their tournament. All right, this is a question that sits right here. This is the if game. Senator Elizabeth Warren is making it clear that she wants Secretary of Treasury if Joe Biden wins. It would certainly appease the left, but it certainly would scare the wits out of Wall Street. Marianne, is this a chance worth taking for Biden?
Elizabeth Warren would be the perfect pick for this if Joe Biden wins because he's going to implement an FDR-style recovery, and she could do just that. It requires someone who understands how to hold Wall Street accountable, get public funds out there, get people back to work, get people back on track, and hold the Trump administration accountable for all their wrongs. She could do that waking up out of bed, putting one foot on the floor. But that's the question here, is whether he will do that. But she would be the perfect person to do all of it.
Rob, she has made it clear she would like the job.
Listen, this would be a doomsday choice for Joe Biden to put Elizabeth Warren in there. This is the person who said that she created the Occupy Wall Street movement. This would be a huge wet blanket on the economy, an economy that's booming despite COVID. And if Joe Biden were to do it, it would be an extreme early misstep.
Well, she protects consumers too. I mean, she set up a whole department. I mean, there's no one else who could step in and do that job but her, frankly.
Consumers are protected by their 401ks going up. And listen, there's somebody who can keep an eye on Wall Street but not be the wet blanket that Elizabeth Warren would be.
A whole lot of folks don't have 401ks.